Ladies and gentlemen, every one of you here today has at some point made a promise to yourself that you did not keep. You told yourself you'd start the diet and you quit after 3 days. You told yourself you'd wake up at 5 a.m. to hit the gym, but when the alarm screamed in your ear, you smashed the snooze button and rolled over. You told yourself you'd study harder, work harder, grind harder, and then you didn't. But don't shake your head. Don't pretend it's not true. We've all done it. But let me ask you a question. Why? Why does your brain betray you when you know, logically, exactly what you should be doing? The answer isn't that you're lazy. It isn't that you're weak. It's that your brain is ancient hardware trying to operate in a modern world. You are carrying around a 3-pound organ in your skull that evolved to keep you alive in the wilderness, not to make you thrive in boardrooms, classrooms, or gyms. It evolved to keep you safe, not to make you successful. And the brutal truth is this: safety and success do not live in the same neighborhood. When you try to force yourself to do something difficult, whether it's going for a run, having a tough conversation, writing that business plan, or finally quitting the toxic relationship, your brain immediately calculates risk. It whispers to you, stay comfortable, stay warm, stay hidden. Don't waste energy. Don't expose yourself to pain. That is the same circuitry that once kept your ancestors alive when lions were prowling the savannah. Comfort meant survival. Conserving energy meant living another day. Avoiding pain meant keeping your blood inside your body. But today, lions aren't chasing you. Saber-tooths aren't waiting in the tall grass, and yet your brain reacts to discomfort as if it were a threat to your survival. Sitting down to work on your goals instead of scrolling on your phone feels like danger. Pushing your body at the gym feels like danger. Standing up to your boss feels like danger. It's absurd, but it's real. And until you understand this ancient programming, you will forever be a slave to it. Now, here's the breakthrough. The brain is plastic. Plastic doesn't mean soft. It means moldable, adaptable, capable of rewiring itself. And that means you can train your brain to override its default settings. You can force it to stop treating hard things like death sentences and start treating them like opportunities. You can rewire the very circuits that scream at you to stop, to quit, to back down. And I'll tell you how. Let's start with a simple, everyday example. Imagine a man who has been sedentary his whole life. He eats junk food, skips workouts, and complains about his back hurting. One day, he decides he's going to change. He goes to the gym, he gets on the treadmill. Within 5 minutes, his lungs are burning, his legs ache, sweat drips down his face. His brain screams, stop. This is pain. This is suffering. This is dangerous. And what does he do? He quits. He convinces himself he'll try again tomorrow. But here's what he doesn't know. If he had just kept going, if he had pushed through for another 10 minutes, something remarkable would have happened. His body would have released endorphins. His brain would have adapted to the strain. He would have started to experience what athletes call the second wind. He would have begun to teach his nervous system that hard effort isn't fatal. It's transformative. The only way to force your brain to do hard things is to make it uncomfortable, repeatedly, until discomfort itself becomes familiar. That is the essence of neuroplasticity. Your brain wires itself according to repetition. Do something often enough, whether it's good or bad, and it becomes automatic. That's why you can tie your shoes without thinking, drive your car while daydreaming, or scroll social media for an hour without realizing it. Your brain loves patterns. It builds highways out of your habits. And if the only highways you've built are the ones of comfort and avoidance, then of course the car of your life will always drive straight into mediocrity. But when you consciously choose to do hard things, even in small doses, you start paving new roads. You start teaching your brain, this is safe, this is possible, this is who I am now. Think about cold showers. The first time you step into freezing water, your nervous system goes into shock. You gasp, your heart races, every instinct tells you to leap out. But if you force yourself to stay, if you do it again tomorrow and the day after, your body adapts. Your stress response calms faster. Your willpower strengthens. And suddenly, you've proven to yourself that you can override panic with choice. You see the power in that? It's not about the cold water. It's about proving to your brain that its fear signals are not the law of the land. They're just noise. And once you realize they're just noise, you can face bigger challenges. You can make the phone call you've been avoiding. You can start the business. You can walk away from people who poison your soul. Science backs this up. In neuroscience, we know about the prefrontal cortex, the rational executive part of your brain. It's the part that plans, that sets goals, that knows you should be working instead of procrastinating. But the prefrontal cortex is in constant battle with the limbic system, the emotional, survival-driven part that just wants you safe, cozy, unchallenged. Every time you force yourself to do something hard, you strengthen the circuits in your prefrontal cortex. You literally grow neural connections that make discipline easier the next time. You are lifting mental weights. You are building a brain that obeys your commands instead of your fears. But let me be clear, this is not easy. If you're waiting for motivation, you're dead already. Motivation is a lie. Motivation is like a spark. It flares up, it feels good for a moment, and then it's gone. You cannot build a life on sparks. You build a life on discipline, on training, on doing the hard thing whether you feel like it or not. If you only act when you feel motivated, you'll act once a week at best. If you train yourself to act on command, you'll change your entire destiny. I remember speaking with a young entrepreneur who wanted to start his own company. He had the idea, the talent, even the resources. But every time he sat down to work on it, he found himself too tired or too stressed or not ready yet. Months went by, then years, and he still hadn't launched. Do you know why? Because every time his brain whispered, "Not now," he obeyed. He had trained himself to submit to comfort, and that training destroyed him more effectively than any competitor ever could. Contrast that with another young man I know who wanted to become a surgeon. Do you know what that path requires? Years of study, brutal exams, sleepless nights, unrelenting pressure. But he forced himself every day to sit with the discomfort, to read when he wanted to sleep, to practice when he wanted to party, to keep cutting, dissecting, memorizing, pushing, while his brain screamed at him to quit. Today, he saves lives with his hands. The difference between the two men was not talent, it was not intelligence. It was the willingness to force the brain to obey. And let me tell you something most people don't want to hear. You cannot negotiate with your brain. You cannot reason with fear. You cannot politely ask laziness to step aside. You must dominate it. You must treat your brain like the unruly child that it is and force it into submission through action, not words. You can't talk yourself into greatness. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but what if I fail? Good. Fail. Failure is not the enemy. It is the tuition you pay for growth. Every time you fail, your brain learns. Neural pathways adjust. You become more resilient. The only failure that destroys you is quitting. The rest are just stepping stones carved into your nervous system. So if you want to force your brain to do hard things, start today. Start small, but start. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Put your phone down and read a book for an hour. Write a page of that novel. Go for a run. Take the cold shower. Do it when your brain screams no, do it anyway. Because every time you override that voice, you are carving new circuits into your brain, circuits that will one day make the impossible feel automatic. And here's the secret almost no one tells you. The brain respects consistency more than intensity. You don't need to run a marathon tomorrow. You don't need to fast for 10 days or lock yourself in a library for 20 hours straight. What you need is repetition. What you need is proof stacked on proof that you are capable of overriding comfort. The brain rewires by experience, not by theory. You can read all the self-help books you want, watch all the motivational videos, attend all the seminars. None of it will matter until you teach your brain through action that you are the one in charge. This is why the military produces some of the most disciplined people on earth. It's not because recruits are born different. It's because the system forces them into repeated acts of discomfort until obedience becomes reflex. Wake up at dawn. Run until your lungs scream. Push your body through mud, rain, exhaustion. Every cell in you wants to quit, but quitting isn't an option. Over and over, the brain is confronted with difficulty. And over, the soldier learns that difficulty can be endured. By the time training is done, that brain has been rewired for toughness. It's not theory, it's biology. But let's take this beyond the battlefield. Look at a single mother working 2 jobs, raising kids, studying at night. She doesn't have the luxury of listening to her brain's whining. She can't afford to collapse into comfort. Her children depend on her. And so every day, she overrides her fatigue, her stress, her fear. Every day, she does what most people would call impossible. What is she really doing? She is forcing her brain to accept hard things as normal. She is bending her neurology to her will. That is strength. That is power. Now, you want a softer example? Think of learning an instrument. The first time you pick up a violin, it sounds like a cat being strangled. Your brain hates it. You feel clumsy, frustrated, embarrassed. You want to quit. But if you push past that, if you keep practicing, something changes. The screeching gives way to sound, then to music, then to mastery. And what is mastery? It is nothing more than your brain, through thousands of repetitions, forging new circuits so that what was once impossible becomes effortless. And yet, here's the tragedy. Most people never push past the screeching stage in their own lives. They try something hard, they feel pain, they quit. They live forever in that first stage, never discovering what could have been theirs if only they had endured the discomfort long enough for their brain to adapt. Now let's go even deeper into the science of dopamine. Dopamine is not just the chemical of pleasure, as most people think. It is the chemical of pursuit, of motivation. Every time you chase something meaningful, dopamine surges. But here's the trick. Your brain releases more dopamine not when you achieve the goal, but when you move toward it. That means your brain is literally designed to reward you for the chase, not just the catch. But modern life has hijacked this system. Social media, video games, junk food, they all flood your brain with cheap dopamine, easy dopamine, instant dopamine. And what happens when you flood this system with easy hits? You destroy your brain's tolerance for the hard ones. You can't sit still and study because a textbook doesn't light up your brain the way a TikTok video does. You can't train at the gym because dumbbells don't give you the same rush as a bag of chips. So if you want to force your brain to do hard things, you must starve it of the cheap hits. You must reset your dopamine system. That means cutting out, or at least cutting down, the instant pleasures that weaken your will. Replace them with the slow, effort-driven rewards. Write a page of your book and feel the satisfaction. Lift a heavier weight and feel the progress. Save a little money and watch it grow. That's the real dopamine. Earned dopamine, not stolen dopamine. And when you train your brain to crave that, hard work becomes addictive. Now let me tell you about a study with rats. Researchers gave rats 2 levers. One lever dispensed food immediately. The other required them to press it multiple times before the food came. Guess what happened? Once the rats experienced the delayed lever, they actually preferred it. They found more pleasure in the work than in the instant reward. The same wiring lives in you. Your brain is capable of finding joy in effort, but you have to unlock it. And the only way to unlock it is to stop feeding it garbage shortcuts. Now, I want you to imagine your brain like a muscle. If you never lift anything heavier than a spoon, your muscles stay weak. If you never ask your brain to do anything harder than scrolling, your mental strength stays weak. But when you lift heavier and heavier, the muscle grows. When you tackle harder and harder challenges, your brain grows. It adapts. It rewires. And suddenly the things that used to terrify you now feel trivial. The phone call that once made your heart race now feels like nothing. The workouts that once broke you now feel like warm-ups. The conversations that once paralyzed you now feel like routine. This is what growth feels like. It's not mystical, it's neurological. But growth requires friction. Without resistance, there is no adaptation. Without struggle, there is no rewiring. Think about astronauts in space. In zero gravity, their muscles atrophy, their bones weaken because there is no resistance. Comfort is their destruction. That's why they have to exercise for hours a day in orbit, just to keep their bodies from falling apart. Your brain is the same. In the absence of resistance, it decays. Comfort is not neutral, it is toxic. It robs you of strength, of discipline, of possibility. And yet people worship comfort. They build their lives around it. They choose jobs they hate because they're safe. They stay in relationships that kill their soul because they're comfortable. They anesthetize themselves with screens and food and excuses. And then they wonder why they feel empty. It's because the brain cannot find meaning in comfort. Meaning is born in the furnace of challenge. Purpose is forged in the fire of struggle. I doesn't remember forget a patient I once studied during my work on neurorehabilitation. She had suffered a stroke that left her unable to walk. Doctors told her she'd never recover full mobility. But she refused to accept it. Day after day, she forced her brain and body through grueling therapy. Every step was agony. Every session, her brain screamed, "Stop! You'll never make it." But she did not quit. And slowly, agonizingly, her brain rewired itself. Neurons that had been dormant were recruited to take over the functions she lost. Circuits rerouted, muscles reawakened. After 2 years, she walked across the room unassisted. Do you understand what that means? She literally forced her brain to create new pathways where none existed. That is the power you carry inside your skull right now, but most of you never use it. You live as prisoners inside a cage that doesn't even exist. The door is wide open, but your brain tells you it's locked. You sit inside, waiting for motivation, waiting for the right time, waiting for someone to give you permission. That time will never come. You have to walk out of the cage yourself. You have to force it. And let me tell you something very few people ever realize. The brain is not built for happiness. It is built for survival. Happiness is a byproduct. Meaning is a choice. And the only way to create meaning is to take on responsibility, to do the hard things that matter. If you spend your life chasing happiness, you will find nothing but fleeting moments. If you spend your life taking on the hard responsibilities, forcing your brain to grow, you will find something far greater than happiness. You will find fulfillment. So ask yourself right now, what is the hard thing you've been avoiding? What is the conversation you won't have? What is the work you won't start? What is the habit you won't break? That is your test. That is where your growth lies. And you already know it. Deep down, you know exactly what you need to do. You don't need more information. You don't need another lecture. You don't need another excuse. You need to act.